When Paul Russell was checking in on an elderly relative, he never thought he'd be walking into a scene out of the movies. In fact, Paul said what he encountered was straight from the movie Alien. At 82 years old, Paul Russell's Alzheimer's-stricken distant relative had just begrudgingly moved out of his Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania home. The man, who doesn't know anybody anymore, had been living on his own until his illness made it impossible for him to take care of himself. Little did his family know, moving him out would set off a chain of events too weird to imagine. Controversially, the nursing home did not permit any animals on the premises. Sadly, that meant Siam, the man's 17-year-old Siamese cat, had to be left behind. This is where Paul jumped at the opportunity to help. Due to the man living on the fringes of Pittsburgh, he'd been living alone in a gradually deteriorating state for quite some time. Without proper assistance, poor Siam's health went from bad to worse. So when Paul decided to check in on Siam, he'd expected to find a bit of chaos, as anyone would. But never in a million years would he have ever expected to walk into this. When Paul opened the door, it became immediately clear that he was the first person to set foot in there for quite some time. Upon entering the house, Paul was stunned by a disaster scene straight out of Hoarders. What's worse, Siam was nowhere to be found. What happened here? He began sifting through the messy house, praying to find Siam alive. And while it was practically impossible to actually see the cat, he did hear some low, cat-like growls coming from the other room. After rummaging through clusters of boxes, he ended up finding Siam camped out in the bathroom tub. The little guy was ravenously hungry. Who knows when Siam last had a decent meal? Paul began thinking about what he was going to do with Siam. He heard something that made his blood run cold. That same low, scratchy growl could be heard echoing from the cellar across the hall. But if the cat was in here with him, then what was out there making that sound? He descended down into the cellar. While most of us would probably just take Siam and run, thankfully Paul's cat-like curiosity got the best of him. Unwilling to find out, Paul darted straight out of the house. He'd need to muster every ounce of courage he had before going back in for a closer look. With a flashlight looking, it was almost like a horror movie, and I found her hunkering in the corner. I thought, my God, this is a cat. In an instant, Paul and his wife Jill rushed the poor creature to the vet. The cat, aptly named Heidi due to its affinity for hiding, was trapped under pounds and pounds of its own matted fur. Sadly, its 82-year-old owner had completely forgotten about Heidi for a very, very long time. The vet team was stunned at Heidi's appearance. They hadn't seen anything like that, Caitlin Lasky said. After putting Heidi under general anesthesia, they carefully began cutting away at the mass. Our medical team shaved off pounds of intertwined fur from her body, and needless to say, the cat is feeling much better now. The fur had accumulated up to 2 pounds in weight. Lots of fur. It had to be years of matting for it to get that long. In fact, Heidi turned out to be not just the hairiest cat in history, but also one of the fattest. And now Heidi had an even bigger problem. She had no place to call home. Thankfully, after Heidi was discharged from the vet hospital, Paul and his wife decided to take both Heidi and Siam in. Both felines now have a forever home with the Russells and instant siblings in the couple's 3 other cats and 2 dogs. After years of neglect, it's clearly going to take some time for her to settle in. She's been hiding under the bed for the past couple of days, Russell said. I've been dragging her out and holding her, and she purrs a lot. The last couple of days, she's climbed out from under the bed on her own and into a cat bed I have. So she's starting to work her way to see people more. The companionship of a pet can bring many positive benefits to the elderly. However, owning a pet is a large responsibility, said Dan Rossi. If a family member, friend, or neighbor owns a pet, please help them to make sure there's a support system in place if and when mental faculties begin diminishing. It will take more time to see who Heidi really is, but she's slowly adjusting to life without pounds of overgrown fur. Thank goodness someone finally realized Heidi was suffering under all that fur. Hopefully, this story will help prevent other incidents of accidental pet neglect among the elderly.